God find you. Matthew 28 and 18 is a very familiar passage of Scripture to the body of Christ. And that it says, Jesus came and told the disciples, I have given you all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. That is the mission of the church, to go and make disciples. You were discipled to sit in this seat today. Now, as you move forward in your discipleship, you ought to be seeing a transition take place where you are able to go out and disciple others. Now, I have a disclaimer for that. You joined the church, you were struggling with something, i.e. drugs. Don't go back to the crack house and try to call your buddies out of there. You know you ain't strong enough to not get back on crack. Y'all get what I'm saying? Continue in your process until God releases you to go back to that environment and be a blessing to somebody else. Not to know the purpose of a thing to which a person is related is always a good thing. One thing that a lot of people are on the path of is searching for their purpose. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why did God put me here? The first thing I want you to acknowledge is that your primary purpose on this earth, it's in the Bible, forgive me for not having the scripture, but your primary purpose being on this earth is for trying to find out what job you're supposed to have, who your mate is supposed to be, or if you married the right mate. Your primary purpose is to give God praise.
That's right.
Amen.
That is your primary purpose. You don't have to ask and ponder all day long what my purpose is in life. If you give God praise, He will lead you and guide you to where He wants you to be, to utilize the skills and talents that He gave you. The church is God ordained and God sustained. Even though we make up the bride of Christ, the church, it is not ours. This is God's church. This is His bride. We are His bride that He's going to come back for. The church is the vehicle of the purpose of God in the world today. Now, a lot of people don't come to church because church is streamed on several media outlets. But do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. I think that's scripture today. Make your way to church on Sunday. Now, I understand the weather is bad and all that. You know, you can catch it online. But be in church. What you experience in the sanctuary, you do not experience at home on your couch in your bed.
Amen.
Now, every now and then, the Spirit comes through the screen. I'm a witness to that. But am I really getting all that the Spirit has for me in that moment by being at home versus being in the space with like believers? Where God is pouring in through His Spirit revelation, transformation, restoration. Am I getting everything that the saints are getting being gathered together while being at home? There are, I was in the bookstore yesterday because I was asked to do this presentation. And there's a book I encourage everyone to get. Most of my talk is coming from this book. I am a church member, except my opening here about purpose. The book is called I'm a Church Member. I recommend all of you to get a copy of that book. But while I was in the bookstore, I ran across a book that talked about the black church. Now, sure, we ought to look at the different contexts in life when we study different things. And I know for our community, we wonder, is the black church still alive? Will we lose such and such? But I don't really think that matters. Whether the black church still has it or whether the black church lost it. The church is the bridegroom of Christ. And that's all that matters. Christ is coming back for his bride.
Yes.
Not bridegroom, but bride. Christ is coming back for his bride. And we ought to be doing what we are supposed to be doing. Theology and trying to figure out context is good. But are we doing what God called us to do according to this book? All right. That's enough on my soapbox. 3 questions. What are they? What brought you here? What is your journey? Did God find you? Or did you find God? Ponder on those. First question is, what is membership? Anybody? What is membership to you? I didn't say church membership, but what is membership? Being a part of something. What else? Having things in common. What else about membership?
Actively participating.
Actively participating. Y'all missing something.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, okay.
Well, when you say membership, I see the ship, I think about tithing, so that would be
Okay, not
giving.
Not just in a church context, but just membership.
Just giving in that organization or that church or whatever you're a part of, giving of yourself and your resources.
So let me help y'all out when I'm talking about membership. I'm a member of Enterprise, and I'm a gold member for Hertz Rental Car.
Okay.
Now, when I rent from Enterprise, they don't take the additional $200 on my credit card to hold it until I return the car. So I stopped renting with Hertz because Enterprise just takes a percentage. But when I rent with Hertz as a gold member, my name is on the board and I can just walk to the car. So with membership, in addition to all those things y'all listed, are perks and privileges. That's what I'm getting at. Membership, perks, privileges. That is the attitude and mentality a lot of people have after they've been in church for a while. After they came down the aisle, gave a preacher their hand and gave God their heart, they sit up in church thinking they are part of a membership club, deserving of perks and privileges when you're supposed to be getting off your behind and be putting your hands to the plow to do the work that God calls you to do. It's not about being served. Being in church is about serving. Y'all get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Membership. Membership, perks, privileges. Others will serve me. When I go to Enterprise, oh, hello, Mr. Brantley. And my wife with me, she may get us an upgrade. You know? All right. Tragically, this is the understanding many church members hold. The music ain't hitting right. There were a few examples earlier, not to knock, but just using examples. In your case, it wasn't preferences. It was about being with the Spirit of God is. But for some people who come to church, when we're church shopping, church hopping, the choir don't sing right. Or I don't like the way the pastor closed. Or that deacon didn't pray right. Or the ushers do too much. Just all kind of stuff. We come to church, we walk through the front door with a consumer mentality. How can the church best serve me? That's an unbiblical view of membership. The ministries that they have available don't cater to my kids. They don't have an awesome youth ministry or children's ministry. Unbiblical view of membership. Membership should not be about receiving in the church context, in the biblical context. It should be rather about receiving and not giving in the church biblical context. In the church biblical context, membership ought to be about serving and not being served. Entitlements over sacrifices. We ought to be sacrificing and not thinking that we are entitled. Coming back to your point, ma'am, tithe and offering is viewed as membership dues. I pay my tithes, I'm in trouble, the church ought to help me. Well, the church has policies and procedures. Because God is a God of order. So that the church can be a beacon of light in the community to come to the aid of those who are in need because a certain person or people can't get their crap together in Washington D.C. The government shut down for over a month. The church has to be in position to step up and help the community, and you can't get pissed off about it because the church didn't help your individual situation. You tell me when people are quiet. All right. Keep going. The tithe is a tenth of everything that God gave us. It's our first fruit. Tithe goes all the way back to the Old Testament. A tenth of it happened when Abraham met with Melchizedek, who was a king of Salem. I'm not going to get deep, but we'll read it in your own leisure. Tithe began by giving a tenth of your earnings, your first fruits. So what's that look like, Matt? Okay, you get your paycheck. Do you tithe off the gross or the net? Trying to help somebody today.
Gross.
Gross. Why? Why do you tithe off your gross?
He gave it all.
Huh?
He blessed you with all that money.
Well, I mean, that's a given. But why do you tithe off the gross? And
It's
not
the higher
net?
amount.
It's your first fruit.
First fruit, yeah.
The gross income is your first fruit. The net is what's after Uncle Sam took you. And what he gonna give you. But God says when you give back to me, hold on, I see you. When you give back to me a tenth, you don't give me off with your 90%, well, whatever the percent Uncle Sam gave you. You go to the top and give me, and I'll stretch
All right.
the remaining of the net. The math is a little jacked up, but 90 and 10, y'all get it, right? All right, yes, ma'am.
So if you get like, make what percentage, if you get, make 700 or something, how much would you give?
10%, take zero off, $70.
Okay, what about 15?
Take zero off.
How much? Okay, thank you.
So, the way I started tithing as a child, if they gave me $10, I had to give $1 of that 10. And guess what? I still had 9. But my selfish mentality said, I lost $1. I lost my $1.
Brother Chaplain, is that the only way, that you can tithe? Can't you tithe by helping someone or, helping, doing something in the community or giving to the home? More than.
So here's my theology on that. If you are a part of an organization, a church specifically, a tenth ought to go to that organization. Because you're going there on a weekly basis, getting your soul fed to go do the work that you do in the community. If, for instance, you are on hiatus, or God is dealing with you like he dealt with me and I was not in the church, I would take that tenth, pray over it, and then give it to an organization to help something or somebody. But when I'm in place, that tenth goes to the storehouse so that there'll be meat in my house.
All right.
Okay? So we try to find ways to get around tithing because we have reasons why we don't want to give it to the church. But the tithe belongs to the church. It doesn't belong to us. Technically, it belongs to God. Let me clarify that.
Right.
We just give it to God in church, but the tithe belongs to God. Because it keeps the lights on. The mashed potatoes and fried chicken y'all ate come from the tithe y'all put in the plate on Sunday. So the tithe helps run the operations of the church. People on staff gotta be paid. The bills gotta be paid. So we bring our tithe to the storehouse. The community has to be served. Tithe and offering. Your offering is separate from your tithe. It's what you give in addition to your tithe. All right. We all good on that? Amen. All right. So, God doesn't want you to just give out of obligation. But God loves what?
A cheerful giver.
Everybody knows.
Amen.
All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. is a metaphor of church as body. The hands, the eyes, foot, we are all members of one body. So, somebody may be the eye. Don't feel you're not needed. If I didn't have any eyes, I couldn't see. So that's somebody help me. If I didn't have any hands, I couldn't feel. Somebody had to feed me. If I didn't have any feet, I couldn't walk. Somebody had to roll me. We are all needed in the body of Christ. If I'm an eye in the church, I can't be the foot. So what am I saying? Stay in your lane.
Oh.
Function where God has you to function, and let's be a collective body. 1 Corinthians 13, we use it a lot in terms of counseling and other things, relationships. Talks about love. Love is the central attitude not only in relationships, but also within the church. It's an action all members should have one to another. 1 Corinthians 14 deals with the messed up concept of the church, because it talks about the different gifts, prophecy and talking in tongues. Right? So, another thing we need to take note of is that membership is often viewed as a business or organizational concept. Church is in the business of saving souls. But unlike Salem, there are some people who are unfortunate to be in an environment where soul saving is the focus, because they're trying to figure out how to get more money out of the people. So they preach, and they tell you to come down and give all these offerings. And people who are naive to this can't go home and pay their bill, because they done gave it all to the church. But God gave you a mind and spirit. He said, if any man lack wisdom, do what? Ask of God. If you ain't certain about what the preacher and the people in the church are telling you to do, you need to seek the Lord for wisdom. And you ought to be praying anyway before you do anything that is related to the church. Make sure you're on the same spirit. So while church has a business concept, it is not its primary purpose. Saving souls. When we talk in terms of membership, we have to ask ourselves this other question. Add this to the third three I gave you. How can I best serve the church? Not how can the church serve me, or should I serve? Let me help you all out. I grew up in church, right? And there was a period in my life where my parents didn't take us to church. So I connected with a deacon in the church at the time. They adopted me as one of their own. That relationship grew into multiple relationships. Come to find out they was family some way or another. So I became part of the family, all right? So, and this may help somebody who's unemployed. When I was going through a period in my life when I was unemployed and didn't have any work to go to, I went to the church. Now, aside from my ministry responsibilities that God gave me, I'm used to serving in the church as the pastor's armor bearer. That's the gift and ministry that God has on my life. I'm the pastor's right hand. I'm not the right hand of Selwyn. I'm the chaplain in there for him. But prior to coming here, I was my pastor's right hand. But during those moments of unemployment, when Sunday was not around, it was Monday through Saturday, I would come to church, get a toilet brush, and go clean the toilet. I would go in the sanctuary. If I saw any papers in the pews, I'd clean the pews out. Nobody had to ask me to come to the church during the week to do this. My service was to the Lord. When I was single, had a bad breakup, I would go to the church. Cry my little heart out at the altar and go find something in the church to do. The church is where you come for restoration. The church is where you come for healing. The church is where you come for deliverance. The church is not coming, church is not about coming to be seen, it's about coming to serve.
Amen.
Whether the people in here, or there ain't nobody in here. This ought to be your hiding place. When you up and when you down. Out of all the people that come to church, whether it's a big church or a small church, and maybe leadership can help me, but only 1/3 of the membership are functioning members. It doesn't matter that Salem got the largest membership in Omaha. Ain't but 1/3 running the church. And you'll see that 1/3 on Wednesday night for Bible study, during the weekend, for different rehearsals, or during the week when the pastor got to preach somewhere. Anytime you see the same folks over and over and over and over, them the ones that holding the church down. While the rest of us are doing what we do, waiting on Sunday morning, 8:30 and 11:30 to show up. One of the things that is crucial in the church is unity. Unity is critically important. Let me help you all out. 2 weeks, what's happening? Unity. But y'all know we ain't that united if we talk about no black issue. In 2 weeks, what's happening?
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Not next Sunday, let me help y'all out, but the following Sunday, what's happening?
First Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Oh.
Everybody gonna be at their house or somebody else's spot, unified,
This one.
waiting on one of them teams to win. Right? And it don't matter what nobody think about nobody at that moment. Because we're unified for a common purpose. We may be arguing and fussing and cussing because we got opposing teams in the house. But we're unified because we're watching this game. We gotta be unified in church. That same family we tolerate at the house in front of the TV for the Super Bowl is the same family we tolerate in here when the word is going forth. Because the truth of the matter is we're not gonna always get along with the person sitting next to us. We become family to one another, brothers and sisters, and we should be anyway. We become brothers and sisters to one another. So if we are in a position to deal with the nonsense with our own siblings, why can't we do that from a spiritual sense? And forgive our brothers and sisters who have faults within the church. A lot of times we want to leave church because somebody did something to us, or somebody didn't acknowledge us, or we think they ain't thinking about us, so we don't want to come. Or we end up leaving, or we're the problem, and don't want to acknowledge that we're the problem, so we go join another church and break up their unity. Then we leave that church and go cause division at another church when we have failed to deal with ourselves. So do a self-check and practice unity. Another thing that destroys the church is gossip and negative talk. That disrupts unity. Now watch this. Because all y'all are new to Salem, right? And there's some people that already been here. And then Deacon had Minister Montague come up, and our usher representative come to get y'all engaged to join the ministry, right? Then you're gonna have them voices that already been on these ministries talking about who was that, who they think coming to join our ministry, so they become discouraging to you to get involved because you knew. So what happens? You finally get into the clique. I hate to use that word. But you get in good with the clique, and then somebody who is new is now in the shoes that you're in right now, and then you start doing what they did to you. Repetition. So we got to break this cycle. Don't talk about new people when they come in. Embrace them. Because the same way they talked about you when you came in, don't be that person talking about somebody else when they come in after you. So we have to be unified. I hope I'm not boring y'all. I'm almost done.
No, you
Almost done. Almost done. In addition to unity, we have to have the mind of Christ. And I'm going to turn to Philippians chapter 2 and read this very quickly. Don't tell the Baptist preacher that, especially on Saturday. All right, I'm gonna use wisdom. Hurry up. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. And you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He gave up his divinity. He's God, but he gave up that. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being when he appeared in human form. He humbled himself in obedience to God. A lot of times we think we have to be obedient to the people who are in leadership of the church. But if our obedience is to God, then we can obey those who are in leadership. He died a criminal's death on the cross. Therefore, God elevated him to the place of highest honor and gave him the name above all other names. That at the name of Jesus, y'all help me before I get happy. Every knee should bow. Every tongue in heaven and on earth and declare that Jesus Christ is Lord. Glory to God the Father. I got to close that up before I get happy. All right.
Help yourself.
Yeah.
Help yourself.
So, in having the mind of Christ, we have to pray. We have to pray for our leaders. We have to pray for the pastor and his family. We have to pray for the leaders under him. We have to pray for each other. Because the devil is powerful. But watch this. God is much more powerful.
Amen.
What is it, 1,000? One could put 1,000 in flight, two put 10,000 in flight.
Yes.
There's unity when we come together to pray. Come to a close. Not only is everything I said important, but you can't be effective in church if your home is jacked up.
That's right.
Don't come up in here trying to run nothing and lead nothing if you can't have no control and lead stuff at your house. All right?
Amen.
You can't do it.
You're right.
It doesn't work for the pastor. It doesn't work for the deacon because Book of Timothy talks to us directly about that. Don't go over here and try to lead the church when you can't even control your house. And the same rule applies to you. Don't come up in here trying to lead no ministry and your house is jacked up. Because while you're trying to chastise somebody for missing their Sunday on the door, your son and your daughter in the corner talking to member so-and-so about what you did last night. So make sure your house is in order before you're going to be here trying to run anything in the church. Don't be so judgmental about other people's situations. Because while you're trying to help them get the speck out of their eye,
Yeah.
you got that big behind log
And you're right.
in your own eye. So we're going to get that log out so you help them get that speck out.
Amen.
Pray together. Pray for spiritual protection from moral failure. Pray that, God gives pastor the word for our hearts to hear. In addition to that, know that just because you come to church on Sunday, that every Sunday that word not going to be for you. But take what you can out of the word to help you through the week. But every word, every Sunday ain't for you. But that should not stop your prayer that the pastor hear from God to deliver to his people. Pray for the families, encouragement. Pray for encouragement. Pray for strength. Pray for courage. Pray for discernment and pray for wisdom. Another thing we need to do is learn to worship together. If you're single, and you may not have a family to come to church with, live faithfully. Live faithfully to God. You don't have to live in sin. And y'all take that and define it how you wish. But live faithfully to God. If you live faithfully to God, the Bible says that he'll set the solitary with family. So somebody will see that you come to church alone and identify you and make you a part of the family. But that's because you've remained faithful to coming through that door to be seen. Because God put their eye in your direction. Now it can be lonely to be a believer in an unbelieving family. So we have to constantly stay together in unity and in worship and in prayer. And lastly, we have to fall in love with the bride of Christ. We have to fall in love with church. Same way you love your spouse, the same way you love that boyfriend and girlfriend who you ain't with no more, or we breaking your heart right now that you got to go back home to after we leave this here. You know, you go back to that person when you leave here today. Have a love for the church. Love the church. And I'm not saying love the church in the sense that you forsake your family, but love the church with unconditional love. Because the church is a physical house, a physical representation of God that we come to. So love the church, fall in love with it, and understand that unconditional love is not always easy. God ain't gonna always give you what you want. But if you're a true believer, you'll thank God that He doesn't give you everything that you want. But some stuff He's protecting you from that you think you want, that you don't really want. Lastly, I know I said I'm a Baptist preacher.
All right.
Church membership is a gift to be treasured. Any gift that you get ought to be treasured. So as you embark upon your membership here at Salem Baptist Church, treasure it. Enjoy it, but treasure it. Don't take it lightly. Don't get involved in the ministry for a little while and then fall off. You know, if something's going on with you, don't expect necessarily that the phone's gonna ring and somebody's gonna know your situation and call you. Sometimes you got to tell people, sometimes you got to pick up the phone in the midst of your situation and say, hey, Deke, mother, deaconess, so-and-so, you know, minister, I'm going through this. Because if you just stop coming,
They gonna wonder.
if you wasn't fully involved, or depending on who you were involved with, got stuff going on in their family that can't get to you, pick up the phone, let somebody know. It's a two-way thing for church to happen. So, what was your journey? What brought you here? Did God find you? Did you find God? How can I serve my church? Thank you, Deke. Thank y'all for your time.